So before we start, let me just say we're deeply grateful to have been awarded the Aming 2 prize. As we heard, Aming 2 was a true pioneer in digital Buddhist studies. The field that Andrew and I work in is maybe better known for the spectacular discoveries of like new source material, manuscripts, inscriptions. But we hope to show that it has also inspired a lot of digital innovation, and we hope that what we show you will also be useful for other projects in the field in the future. So thank you again very much. So we will split our time. So I will talk for about 20 minutes and provide a general overview of what we have been doing. And then Andrew will delve deeper into the technical aspects and the challenges and solutions that we have found to the challenges. So, yes, the material that we deal with are Gāndhārī manuscripts and inscriptions. Gandhara, as you know, is the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent, so northern Pakistan and eastern Afghanistan in modern political terms. And in antiquity, this was a crossroads of influences from India, from Iran, Hellenism coming from Iran, and of course, it provided the main route to China for Buddhism. Gāndhārā is maybe best known for its particular school of art, Gandharan sculptures like these that present Buddhist ideas in a Hellenistic garb. But as you can see in this beautiful example already, this is the year 5 Buddha, which is now the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. Art and writing, art and inscriptions in this case are closely interlinked. So there is a dedicatory inscription on the base of this piece, for instance. In general, the source corpus we're dealing with is extremely varied, which actually makes it very interesting for us to work on it. So we have inscriptions like the Ashokan Edict on the top left. We have later inscriptions like the relic container on the top right and the relic silver scroll on the bottom. Then we have coin inscriptions, many bilingual with Greek. We have administrative secular documents in this Gāndhārī, the local language of this region. And then, of course, we have manuscripts. So in effect, we can study a Buddhist civilization from a wide variety of different sources, a wide variety of written expressions, so not just literature, but also ritual acts recorded in inscriptions, etc., etc. And that makes it very interesting. And I think the corpus we assemble is rather unique in combining these different types of sources together. We have some illustrations in Gandharan art of how people were using these manuscripts in antiquity. So these monks are holding scrolls. And the general chronological outline is as here. So the language Gāndhārī, the local language, was written in the Kharoshthi script. The Kharoshthi script was probably invented around the late 4th century BC, and it was in use until the 2nd or 3rd century CE. And most of the sources we have are from the 1st and 2nd century CE. And towards the end of the use of Gāndhārī and Kharoshthi, the first Chinese Buddhist pilgrims arrived in Gandhara and prepared the first Chinese translations of Buddhist texts, probably on the basis of material in this language. And then, since the 1990s, suddenly a very large number of new manuscripts, Buddhist manuscripts in this language were discovered. And they are the oldest Buddhist manuscripts and the oldest South Asian manuscripts, and they're therefore very, very precious and important. We have about 150 of them now, and only very few have been published so far. So we're in a field where the large majority of material is still gradually coming out. So I'll just illustrate very quickly how these things are worked on in the traditional way. So the scrolls are unrolled, they're digitized like this. Then there is a long process of reconstruction where you have to move the little fragments to where they actually belong. And you're often helped in this by textual parallels. So you may have a Gāndhārī text, a Pali parallel, a Sanskrit parallel, sometimes several, and 1 or 2 Chinese translations. And in this case, even a Tibetan translation. And the end result, of course, is traditionally a printed book that has the text and a translation and a critical study and a glossary at the end. The process is very similar for inscriptions. So if we're lucky, we have nice photographs of inscriptions like this oil lamp with a dedicatory inscription. If we are less lucky, all we have is hand drawings. So somebody who may not know the script just sort of copied what he saw, and we have to guess what it is. And the end result, again, traditionally is a book. So here's the classic collection of Kharoshthi inscriptions by Steen Konouf. Back in his time, only about 75 inscriptions were known. Now it is more than 1,000 that we all collected in our corpus. So as we got involved in this field in the late 90s, early 2000s, we were beginning to think about digital new ways to treat this material. Here I provide a little timeline of like various initiatives. Many of them you will of course be familiar with. CBETA is in there, of course, in the field of ancient document studies using computers. And both Andrew and I have been doing digital things in the field of Indology and Buddhist studies since the 1990s, and then we teamed up in 2002 when we were both graduate students at the University of Washington. So this is sort of the founding date that we use for our shared project. I'm rather proud that we actually predate the invention of the term digital humanities, which apparently was coined in a book in 2004. The first public mature version of our website was published in 2007 and then in 2020. So 2 years ago, the year we were actually awarded this prize, we went public with a major overhaul that we will present you the technical details of later. In the centerpiece in the beginning was to write a dictionary of the Gāndhārī language. So traditionally dictionaries are made as on the left. This is the Turfan dictionary of fragments from Central Asia. So there they spent 20 years writing index cards in the middle of the 20th century. And when the index cards were complete, then only they started publishing in print format. What we do on the other hand is we gradually assemble our source corpus. And while we are still assembling the source corpus, and we do this in public, right? So there are no hidden index cards. The entire source corpus is public. We gradually start article writing. So the entire process is public from the beginning. And there are no two stages as such. Here are just some ancient screenshots from around 2008 for old time's sake of our website. So we have metadata cards, we have digital texts. We even back then had images that you could zoom in and out of. This was a plugin for Photoshop, I believe, called Zoomify. I don't even know if this exists anymore. Now we have a better solution that we wrote ourselves. And after 20 years of work, this is what we have content-wise. So this is what we have accomplished. So we have a corpus, a digital corpus now that covers everything that is known and published. You can see the numbers for yourself. So overall, there are about 2,800 items in the 4 categories I list here. We are gradually adding images. So we want to have images for every single item and multiple images, everything that we can have and add. So about 2,000 are there right now. We provide historical readings, translations, and we critically edit the corpus. So when we think that a previous edition is wrong, we will correct it. And of course, note the original reading in a footnote. And we have about 3,181, right? Such improvements that we propose. There's a bibliography, as you can see, and then, of course, there is our dictionary. And we are very quickly approaching 10,000 articles. We would never have thought that there are that many words in the Gāndhārī language, actually, but it turns out there is. And as I said, the corpus is complete, and actually also our dictionary coverage is basically complete at this point for everything that has been published. There are many large manuscripts in the process of coming out, so this number will go up when these are published. So about 10,000 lemmata and about 70,000 references, words in context. These are the various URLs that you can go and explore. I mean, basically it's gandhari.org, and you can go from there. You can link to particular items in our corpus, as in the third line, so with this corpus and then slash and then the siglum that we use. And you can even link to particular entries in our dictionary, though that is actually a search. So those are not yet guaranteed to be stable, the bottom URL. This is what our website looks like now, so 14 years after the image I just showed you. And Andrew will give you a live demonstration, so I'll go through this very quickly. You see one new thing is that you have these pop-ups, so you can actually click on every single word in a text, and it pulls out the information relevant to this place from the dictionary and gives you a contextual pop-up of what it means. So this has pedagogical applications, so we have forever changed the face of Gāndhārī studies because students basically don't have to learn the language first. They can just delve into texts and have this help available immediately. But Andrew will show more about this. We still have our metadata cards, like here, that link to bibliographic items. And we collaborate with institutions that hold material in the Gāndhārī language. So in this case, this is a scroll in the Library of Congress. We link to them, where they put the image online in the public domain. Very nice of them. And, they refer back to us. And we can even pull in images by IIIF. So that is another feature that we have added. And there's our dictionary. So we have definitions like this, etymologies, attestations. You see, we had to deal, I don't know if you're going to go into this, but there are many different spellings of most words in Gāndhārī. So one thing we did is we invented a standardized lemma orthography. So you see in how many different ways the word Shramana can be spelled. And we had to choose one for our heading, so you can find things. And there's the principle behind how we chose this that we explain on the website. Bibliography and so on. Now, even though it looks very much the same on the surface, the website, there have been many new exciting software developments behind this. So one thing that Andrew and I have been doing on the site is support for the Kharoshthi script. So first of all, we developed an encoding that has become part of the Unicode standard in 2004 and been updated a few times. And now you can actually digitally typeset text in the Kharoshthi script. So I did this little passage from a manuscript. And it works beautifully. And the third piece that you need is input support. So you can actually enter this Kharoshthi script. And the first software, to my knowledge, that actually offers this is Emacs, the forthcoming version 29 of the Emacs text editor, where I added a way to enter Kharoshthi support. Obviously, we need to get it into Windows next. That will be very important. So with this piece here, I just want to illustrate quickly some thoughts we had about how we structure our new technology and things that would be very important for us. So this is an inscribed sculpture. It has a donative inscription on the bottom. And as you see, it has been interpreted in 3 very different ways by 3 scholars. And Bruff originally supposed that this contained the earliest reference ever to Amitabha Buddha. So he thought the last word should read Amridaha, and he suggested this was Gāndhārī for Amitabha. This was, of course, very exciting, for Buddhist studies. But then our revered teacher, Richard Salomon and Gregory Chopin, in an article in 2002 showed that this is actually wrong, that the last thing there is 2 letters, not 1 letter, and that we should read Amridae. And that means for the immortality of the donor, where Amrita is sort of a synonym of nirvana, okay? So the deathless state. And Sadakata tweaked this reading a little bit more. Now, when we have such a rich history of interpretation, we think we should capture this as well. So we wanted to develop a system where we can have multiple historical interpretations of an inscription there, and then add our own opinion, as the dictionary writers to this as well. And then, of course, it would be important to develop gradually a paleography of the Kharoshthi script. This was basically a paleographic issue that was being debated concerning the last 2 or 1 letters there. And for that, we need to link our texts to images. So we are gradually linking all our texts to images at the Akshara level. And Andrew will show you more about what we can do with that in a moment. So these were some guiding principles, and this is a very basic draft, of the flow of information in our system, which I think speaks for itself. You see there is a stack on the right. This just symbolizes that we have multiple editions in the system at this point. Then in 2010, I developed a grant proposal for a new Buddhist manuscripts project at the University of Munich and the Bavarian Academy. And based on experience, I put a whole position in there for technical support, for programming actually. This enabled us to team up with Stephen White, our software developer in Venice, as you can see. And he sends his greetings, and we have been working with him since 2013. So based on these ideas that I showed you, he developed an editorial system for ancient manuscripts that we called READ, Research Environment for Ancient Documents. We're using this in Munich to prepare our text editions of new manuscripts, but it also has features that are very useful for Gāndhārī.org. So it has also become the new software backend for our presentation of the complete corpus. We released it in 2016 as open source under the GPL license on GitHub. So you can go there, you can download it, and you can use it for your own projects. And there's some statistics at the bottom. It's about 150,000 lines of code. And there's a quick breakdown of the different languages involved. And Andrew will again tell you more about that in a second. So this is available to everybody. And we are very happy to say that other projects are beginning to pick it up. So here we see examples of this software being used for Chinese on the top left, English on the top right, and Mayan in the bottom. And most of these have been pioneered by Andrew again, who has become quite an expert in the Mayan language as well. Okay, looking ahead then, and these are my last two slides, and then I hand over. Things that we now want to do with this exciting new software that we have on the Gāndhārī.org website. So we want to complete and improve our image coverage, both 2D and where available 3D images. There are very few 3D images at this point, and even fewer that can be freely used, but we have the facility to use them as they become available. We want to improve our geospatial information, so ideally you should be able to access inscriptions on a map, and all these sorts of things. As I said, we record history of interpretations now, something Andrew called cubed editions. We want to provide English translations for every single item to make this more accessible to the wider field of Buddhist studies, right? Not everybody reads Gāndhārī. Then, in parallel with the dictionary, we develop a syntactic tree bank, which I think we have an illustration of later. And we develop a Kharoshthi display option based on the font support that you saw earlier. Now, the dictionary, as we said, is basically complete in its coverage. And now we need to improve the articles, especially the subsenses and the etymologies. We have multiple dictionaries there, as you may know, Monier-Williams and Edgerton dictionary. So we want to link these more tightly together. So if you are in the article Dharma in Pali, for instance, and you switch to Sanskrit, you get Dharma. So we want to add this intelligence. We will be adding the Dictionary of Pali by Margaret Cohn and Martin Straube. So this has been decided. So we will become the official venue to present this dictionary online very soon. And the long-term goal would be to grow into a comprehensive Indian Buddhist lexical resource. And this is in collaboration with others like Martin, and this is something we're very excited about. Then we want to write a grammar. This is one of my pet projects, a historical grammar of Gāndhārī as a counterpart of the dictionary. Think Edgerton, right? Dictionary, grammar, and they are tightly linked, and maybe also a simplified introduction to Gāndhārī. The bibliography needs to be subcategorized. Right now it's just this long list of 3,000 items, but you should be able to group them by topic. The catalog should switch to standard vocabularies for things like place names, etc., etc. And then the paleography is coming. Computer vision aided segmentation would be useful. Then we can have paleographic reports for text scribes, maybe a browser for the whole corpus paleographically, and then sort of a written paleography should be, sort of a book that on the basis of this corpus should be developed. And maybe also a small introduction to Kharoshthi. And finally, we're always eager to intensify our collaborations with art historical colleagues, archaeologists, and holding institutions. And topics that are very important for the field are provenance research, because most of our sources are not properly provenanced. They're the result of, lootings and it's very hard to say where any of these things come from. And there we need to collaborate with archaeologists in the field and document what we know. And then also the coordinated study of textual and non-textual features. Remember the first illustration with the inscription on the base of the beautiful statue is something that we want to develop together with art historians. And this is my end, and I would hand over to Andrew for the live demonstration.
Great. Thank you very much, and good morning, and thank you, Stefan. So I would like to talk a little bit about the more technical side of the background of this project, And I would like to emphasize how much of an inspiration projects like C-Beta and the work of Aming were to us as we began this journey more than 20 years ago. So I will set my timer. I'll do a little bit of a demo to just recap some of the core features of the project. So we have the front page, we have the catalog, and Stefan talked about how many items we have in the catalog. We have a catalog of inscriptions, we have a catalog of manuscripts, and there are also documents and the coins, the four really clear branches of our material. We can search the catalog, and one of the features that we can now do is search the catalog by bibliography, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. And we can pull up a particular example from the catalog, in this case, senior manuscript number 14. So we have the item card here, and we can enter the item. And as we scroll through in the text, we can advance through the manuscript image up above. So these are linked. We connect each akshara in the transliteration into the place of the akshara in the original image. So if we want to understand what this word is, we can double click here, and we can see that it's highlighted in the text below, which is Shavaka Sagadi. And so if we want to look at this one, it'll link directly into the dictionary. So we can see that this is the robe. If we click on that link, it comes across neatly into the dictionary so that we can see the full article. And the Kharosthi script is off here, but if we turn that on, we can see the font that was mentioned. So this is displaying in a digital font on Windows. So that is the core elements of the dictionary. As you can see, it's this place where we try to bring together all of the material that would be supporting you in your primary work in Gāndhārī field, so that you can access the primary sources, secondary sources via the bibliography, and also into the dictionary. So we started building this because as students back in the late 90s and early 2000s, we were trying to understand this material in Gāndhārī language, but in order to understand the material, we needed a dictionary, but there was no dictionary. And then we thought, well, okay, we need a dictionary, so we start to write a dictionary, but you can't write a dictionary until you understand the material. So we have this catch-22. And there is a small group of people focused on Gāndhārī and now distributed around the world. And it was very important that as we slowly progress in our understanding of Gāndhārī, that we should make that available to scholars through the internet, because that's what we could now do. And projects like C-Beta and the digital publication of the Pali Canon were the model. They were available at that time. The difficulty with publishing live on the internet, and this is one of the fundamental challenges that we had faced, was our understanding of the material was evolving. And as Stefan showed examples, when you read the text for the first time, you probably want to revise your understanding of the text. And so when you do this work of linking your understanding together, you probably want to be able to change those underlying readings. We'll talk a little bit about our stack. We use a Postgres database at the base of this, and we use PHP on top of that. We're currently using PHP 7, but we've got this computer itself is running on PHP 8. So we do those migrations. That's an extra burden for us. On top of that, we have pure HTML and JavaScript. We don't use web frameworks. We try to keep it very pure so that we avoid the dependencies on other packages, and so we try to keep it as stable as possible. So in the older system, we had Gāndhārī.org sitting, really covering the whole stack. Then, based on our experiences developing Gāndhārī.org, as Stefan mentioned, we worked with Stephen White to develop this read backend. Read by itself could be other levels of the stack as well, but we only use it as the backend. That helps us to preserve the look and feel and the simpler interface that we've used for many years for Gāndhārī.org. So I want to talk a little bit about the structure that this new Postgres database provides. We invested about 3 years developing the design for this database, and it took me an additional 6 years to actually transition to using this as our backend for Gāndhārī.org. So this is the relational schema of the database. All of these are, we adopted principles of not duplicating data. So we try to keep everything as references to the place where it is unique. So the idea here is that we model the facts of our material. If we zoom in on one area, we deal with a lot of items. And whether it's a coin or a pot or a rock inscription or a manuscript, it's an item. Now, items, many of these come in multiple parts. If it's a wooden document, it has a lid, it has a base. Inscriptions often come in 2 parts. So a part is interesting because it was known to the author of the text on that object that there were these 2 separate things. And so the structure of it might be relevant to the interpretation of the material. As you can see, most of the manuscript material is very fragmentary. So we have this concept of fragments. Fragments were not known to the ancient authors of these texts. And so this is not semantically significant. So we distinguish that. Many of these objects have multiple sides. And so we treat those as independent aspects in the database. And then we have a text. A text is a transliteration of the text and metadata about that text. And so this sits as an object in the database. But when we look really into the heart of what we do, we have these images, and we have instances of words in these images, and we have understandings of those words in the dictionary. And so we link these 3 things. But what often happens is that you change your reading, you change your understanding of a particular word, maybe not significantly. So if the retroflex na in prana, if I wanted to reread that as a dental na, it wouldn't change the meaning, it wouldn't change the link to the dictionary, but it would be a change. And there are other kinds of changes that may or may not be significant. So in order to solve that, we link to the akshara level. So we have rectangles in the image that identify each akshara, and we have an interpretation of that akshara. But that interpretation is actually itself decomposed into what we call graphemes. These are the individual elements of the interpretation. So the akshara pra consists of a P, an R, and an A. That is the only place in this whole tree where the P is actually identified, the R is identified, or the A is identified. Everything else is consuming from this fundamental atomic layer. So we can build up, we can change in one place, we can change the N in one place, and it will update directly into the token, understanding of the token, and also in the understanding of the akshara. But the link between the token and the dictionary is unchanged. So in effect, this complex web of our understanding of the Gāndhārī material allows us to navigate and traverse the whole of the corpus in interesting ways. So we can start with a bibliography, and we can find out which are the items that refer to that bibliography. We can start with an item and find out which words from the dictionary are attested in that item. So let's take a look at those 2 things. So if we start with the bibliography and we want to find the items that are attested in that. We can go to the search box, and we mentioned Knuth earlier. So I type Knuth 1929, and I come back with all of the items that are attested, that are referenced by Knuth 1929. If we go to the dictionary, and I want to see all of the words that are attested in the first of the Shahbazgari Rock Edict inscriptions, I can type CKI 0001, which is the reference for that, and it comes back with only those dictionary words that are attested with instances of those words in the Shahbazgari Rock Edict. So effectively, you can generate on the fly a glossary for any text that you're interested in working on. We can also link all of those aksharas that we identified, all of those bounding boxes, those are linked to our interpretation of the akshara. And so what we can do without doing any additional work is we can pull all of those into a report. So this is the read interface. This has not been introduced yet into our Gāndhārī.org interface. So we take our paleography report, we drop it in here. It's going off in the background and pulling live from the image all of the instances of these letters that occur. And so if I click on a letter such as ta, it highlights automatically back into read where all of these occurrences of ta are, and it highlights it in the text below. So you can see the effect of all of the massive linking that is taking place. And if I want to see in a report all of those instances of ta, I can jump in and I can inspect every ta that occurs. I will come back to this one. And then here is so one of the things that we can now do is extract all of the occurrences of the aksharas that occur that are unique in the text. And I've actually, in the background, I filtered this set to only those, we've got the vowels, but only those conjunct forms that occur in the Central Asian documents. So I have scoped the set of the text, the items in the background, to only being those ones that occur in Central Asia, in order to identify the set of conjuncts that occur there. And this is interesting because those documents use a lot of loanwords from perhaps Tocharian and other languages of the area. And so the aksharas that occur in those texts are very unique and different to what we see generally in Gāndhārī. And this is a way of actually testing the font in addition to checking the readings, because there's also a lot of improvement that we can begin to bring to our understanding of those texts once we've got this massive overview of the text available, of the corpus. So Stefan mentioned that we are working on the font, and so this has actually gone on in parallel for many years. Back in 2004, Kharosthi script was added to Unicode, and we were, that's not the end of the story. This is one of the challenges with Unicode, is that people get their writing system into Unicode or their characters into Unicode and you think that's done, but it's just the beginning, really. We need to also add this layer called OpenType, and then we need to work on actual fonts to display the Unicode. So I'll just summarize this briefly. So a key value of the dictionary for us, a sort of key component of the dictionary, is in addition to the standardized lemma form that allows you to look it up, we want to display it in the original writing system, because that helps you connect back to the material, and might actually help learn it as well. So it's an important pedagogical device. So we can display this in Kharosthi script from right to left. And the reason that we can do that is because we established this chart which identifies all of the elements of Kharosthi encoding, which is very similar to Devanagari, but it has the additional complexity of being right to left. So when I joined Microsoft in 2008, I was asked to work on writing system support for complex scripts. And there is a particular component of any operating system called a rendering engine or a shaping engine. And so my job was to look after shaping engines. And I was asked to prioritize the unsupported writing systems of the world and to work out how we would support them and when we would support them. And at that time, it took about 3 people for 1 year to support one writing system. And when I looked at the list of writing systems we didn't support, Kharosthi was on the bottom. Any way I tried to swing it, Kharosthi was going to be on the bottom of this list. It was a right-to-left script. It was a complex script. It had a very small audience. And so it just didn't get up there. So the solution was to actually solve this for all writing systems at the same time. The operating system has to have fundamental knowledge of pieces within a writing system that move from left to right and right to left and move onto the other side of vowels and things. That information is actually available in Unicode, but the operating systems were not making use of that. And so what we did was we developed this engine that consumes its data directly from Unicode, and we supplemented that with a few pieces of additional information that are published on GitHub. And as a result, we were able to now shape any writing system. And we published the specification for this, and so that's what this document is here. We call this the Universal Shaping Engine because it shapes any writing system. And Google picks this up, Apple picks this up, Adobe have picked this up. And so these major tech companies on your Android phone or your iPhone, you have the guts of this, this rendering engine inside. So when we had done that, we were now able to make a font. A font for something like Kharosthi requires complex substitution tables. And so this is just one sample of that. Let's go back to this chart here. If you are the keen-eyed among you might have noticed that this form here, the K with the acute accent followed by Ga, is incorrectly formed. It is not supported by the font in Windows today. And so what I wanted to do was actually go and fix that. So this is a special piece of software for editing font substitution tables. And so what I did was made some changes to this font on the plane on the way here. And when you step through this, it will now form correctly. So it does a lot of substitutions in the back end. You can actually see that the arm of the ka was separated. And even the arm, it made sense the way this font works to pull the arm separately into the display. So with that rendering correctly, I can now update the font, get that into Windows, and we will be able to then fix the display in this document. All right. Thank you very much. Oh, I missed one slide. I have to go back to the syntax slide. Maybe you want to talk about the syntax slide.
Well, as I mentioned, this is one of my particular pet projects, the grammar and the syntax as well. Yeah, basically we have a subsystem in Read that we're going to expose on Gāndhārī.org as well for displaying dependency relations between words in a text, and we're using the framework called Universal Dependencies, which is there's a website you can go, Universal Dependencies, that is being used for many, many languages all around the world, and there are existing applications for closely related languages like Sanskrit. And as always, the idea here is to do this in a coordinated way with our morphological marking, our translations, and our dictionary, of course, and the applications that there are. It's just to make explicit how we understand the words going together. So I've had feedback that it's very nice that we have this dictionary and so on, but the text is still hard to understand because you still don't necessarily know, which word goes with which. So that is being solved by this. And as you can imagine, it also has pedagogical applications. So thank you for leaving me this slide. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you very much. And I really feel work is wonderful and fascinating to me. And of course, I think your work has provided great help to the Buddhist studies. So I would like to thank you again for your great work and your speech. So due to the
Stefan, can you teach how do we pronounce that? It's Gāndhārī, right?
The Gāndhārī, yes, I know. Gāndhārī. Dhanyavad.
Oh, Dhanyavad.
Dhanyavad.
Okay, in Sanskrit too. Dhanyavad. 谢谢啦.
Dhanyavad. 谢谢. So, due to the setup of this session, I think we have no time for any Q&A session. It's very pity, but I believe our winner will be very happy to answer your questions. So, if anyone has a question, please directly come to our speakers in the tea break. So, before the end, I would like to make a small advertisement for the Aming Prize, because the prize will start again in the next year, in 2023. And so if you are engaged into the digital project related to Buddhism, or you know some outstanding digital Buddhist resource projects, please consider to apply to Aming Prize 2023. You can, for getting more information, you can search in Google for the Aming Prize, or go to the website of our DLAS library page. Thank you very much, and thank you too.